I have the pleasure of being joined again by Andrew Brydon. Now, Andrew is the CTO for Australia and New Zealand at HashiCorp. Andrew, great to see you again. Thanks for making time to catch up.
Great to see you, Des.
So, for our audience who have tuned in, we're going to have a conversation with Andrew about his role as CTO for Australia and New Zealand at HashiCorp, and we're going to deep dive into HashiCorp, the organization, who they are, what they do currently, and what some of the latest trends and announcements are. Some details of a recent conference that came out, some really exciting announcements are there, and also a recently released 2025 Cloud Complexity Report. Now, Andrew, when we caught up recently, you gave us a great background of yourself and your role and sort of how you came into HashiCorp. You gave us a bit of a brief look at kind of what the CTO role entails and certainly a 30,000-foot view of the company itself. But what's a day in the life of sort of a CTO of HashiCorp in ANZ currently like? I imagine there's no such thing as a standard single day, but what are some of the things that a day in the life of Andrew Brydon like currently and some of the challenges you face both internally within the organization as well as customer facing?
Yeah, so probably spend the majority of my time meeting with customers, prospective customers. So there'll be C-level people in the technology organizations. Uh, we spend a lot of time with regulated organizations because those are the ones who are looking to kind of use our technologies from our security compliance perspective, because they tend to be focused on thinking about how they deal with their regulators, how they're compliant against various different regulations they have to deal with in the FSI industry, things CPS 234, etc. And it's meeting with them, understanding their problems, and then how can we kind of help them unlock the use of the technologies that HashiCorp provide to unlock more productivity, etc., across our engineering teams. We tend to work with we see a lot of organizations that have tried to do cloud migrations. They've had a couple, one or two or three, even three attempts at it, and they're still trying to make it work from a transformation perspective. We spend time with them, helping them understand maybe how they can work with us to help make that run more effectively and be more efficient. So that's I spend a lot of my time doing that. I spend a chunk of my time doing things like this, which is great. And also at events, talking to people, providing thought leadership into different industry areas. I was recently in Canberra doing some stuff with CISO Canberra, for example, talking through a kind of a roadmap to implement various different security policies. So it's a kind of varying role. I like to talk to people at different levels of the organization. It's good to understand from a strategy perspective, talking to C-level versus on the ground, talking to people at grassroots, kind of understanding the different problems they see. Secondly, then I also spend a chunk of time facing back into my organization, working with them on different customer strategies. Is there some product opportunities, enhancements that we can make? How to help get different product implementations into production faster, etc. It's a kind of it's a role that kind of means that I work kind of cross a kind of a sales, like a pre-sales kind of type setup, supporting our customers and back into the organization, working with our product teams.
Yeah, it's a pretty diverse role. It, as you said, is a little bit internal, external, and it was an amazing event down to. I didn't manage to make it, but the CISO Canberra thing, you had everyone from like Tim Neal from the Commonwealth Security Policy Group all the way to the
Yeah, we
likes
had
of
good
Marnie
coverage. We had
Fraser at
very good coverage. Yeah, it was
Department of
good.
Prime Minister and Cabinet. It was an amazing crew. I can only imagine what the afterward drinks or coffees were like. And you recently had your own conference and summit with some big announcements. I wonder if you can maybe just give us a little insight into that event and give us a couple of the highlights and takeaways from the event itself and some of the announcements you spoke about there.
Yeah. I think the HashiConf was actually the 10th one. unfortunately, I wasn't there. It was school holidays, but it was the 10-year anniversary of HashiConf. So there was a raft of announcements. I'll probably say that I think with the IBM acquisition, there's a number of things that will really help accelerate the use of like that kind of integrated ecosystems of tools across IBM. Integration across Ansible, OpenShift, and other things. So that's kind of these are things that kind of that make it just easier to use our technologies. I think that the interesting things we've been looking at the AI kind of piece with a kind of very open view on how we can move into that space, but be effective when we do it, because I think there's some stats around like 97 or 98% of AI projects seem to kind of not really go anywhere.
They go
I think it's
astray.
very easy to spend a lot of money in that space and not do anything with it. But I will say, the flip side of that, and this is probably going slightly adjacent to what we're talking about, I do applaud that organizations are doing technology proof of concepts to work out that they're not going to do something, and kind of failing fast,
Right.
which is probably not something I've necessarily seen organizations do a lot of. So I think that's actually a very good thing that is going on in the industry right now. If I go back to our HashiConf conversation, we've announced a new approach to agentic AI and infrastructure automation, which will go beta in December 2025, called Project Infograph. So we're looking at how do you provide a real-time infrastructure graphing across hybrid cloud environments. So what we're trying to do at the end of the day, because we already capture state of infrastructure, we already have a huge amount of data of the infrastructure that an organization running. So we're kind of trying to bring that all together, to unify infrastructure, application and service observability and visibility. So, I think this is going to provide a huge kind of uplift in supportability of application stacks.
Yeah.
I think avoiding outages and fixing things much quicker will be the kind of end goal there. And I think the other thing, we are starting to think ahead in terms of scale of applications that organizations are going to be deploying. So everything about the data center explosion that's going on, that all that infrastructure has to be managed from somewhere. That's kind of where we kind of still want to be I think the only player globally really in this
Yeah.
space. We want to continue being that trusted kind of provider of managing infrastructure, no matter where it is or what scale it's at. So that's what we're thinking about there. So that's the kind of the main one. Then there's some kind of interesting things that we keep enhancing our security products as well. We're thinking about comply. Get back to we work with a lot of organizations that need to be compliant, they're regulated. How do we provide just compliance policies for them out of the box? So I need to do PCI DSS. We're going to give you an infrastructure policy that makes you PCI DSS compliant out of the box. Now, a lot of organizations spend a huge amount of time and money to get to that point, and then they get reviewed. Now, if you're just automatically, when you deploy your infrastructure, it's already PCI DSS, that's going to save you a huge amount of time and money.
Yeah.
There's a huge raft of announcements. Probably best if people head over to our HashiCorp.com page to find out more. I think all the talks from the conference are available online if you want to watch those back. But yeah, there's a lot, and there's a lot coming. So it's a super exciting time to be part of HashiCorp.
Yes, it's one of those sort of classic adages that as things get more complex, they start moving quicker and things move in smaller parts. I was quite interested in the infograph announcements because when I looked at what it offered, I initially thought it would be sort of more of the traditional infrastructure layer, but when I started diving deeper into it, and then I have watched the on-demand stuff, which I highly recommend to everyone that's tuning in here, and wherever you see this conversation, this interview, we will have links to the relevant places such as the HashiCorp website and some of these resources, but the on-demand announcement with regard to Project Infograph, what I was really impressed with was it wasn't just infrastructure, but it was all the way through the entire stack. So it was the infrastructure, it was services, applications, some of the people-related stuff around who's got what from an ownership point of view. That part for me was like a big gap that still need to be filled, particularly for people who are standing up and instantiating complex infrastructure for AI, and particularly eventually agentic AI or agents as they became more and more capable. Because I think one of the risks I've seen in this space is people trying to integrate lots of different edge products, but then end up with gaps, and then they're still running around trying to write, bash scripts to pull stuff out and generate logs with open source tools. So I think that was a big fit. The other one that I just want to circle back on was you mentioned it, but the actual integration of IBM into or HashiCorp into IBM, and certainly the integration of HashiCorp into the Red Hat infrastructure. As you mentioned, the likes of their Ansible product, OpenShift, etc. And then you've got the IBM side of things with Watson X and the Orchestrate tools. You become a natural fit into that space, but it also then broadens the capability you can go into clients with as well. I imagine because overnight now you've got not just the portfolio of HashiCorp.com, but the IBM ecosystem, including Red Hat and other companies they also own. That must open some significantly new conversations that give you a range of other things to not just talk about, but also solve problems for.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's really exciting. We I think one of the other announcements was the kind of integration in between Terraform Enterprise and Red Hat's Ansible Terra product, and it's that provides you kind of end-to-end integration, end-to-end kind of deployment of a infrastructure and configuration of your application deployment. So that's something that is very complementary and is enabling us to kind of as you say, go to market together. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're in customers working together as a team with kind of these end-to-end solutions. So the portfolio is definitely very interesting. We're doing other things like there's a product which is complementary with our Vault product, IBM Verify. We're doing a lot of work with the team there, which are actually the IBM Verify team actually based out of Brisbane. So it's
That's
quite
fortuitous.
interesting. Yeah, yeah, it's quite interesting. But we're doing a lot of work with them in customers as well. So that gives you end-to-end management of human and non-human identity. And we're seeing some customers very interested in that as a kind of end-to-end solution between IBM Verify and HashiCorp Vault. So yeah, lots of synergies, lots of kind of opportunities, and definitely interested in talking to customers more about how we can come and kind of solve these end-to-end problems that they have in a kind of holistic way.
Indeed, and also makes the rugby grand finals a lot more interesting with Sydney versus Brisbane, I'm sure, as to who's barracking for who. When we last caught up, we talked briefly about some of the capabilities with regard to Vault and identity management, and you highlighted some of the amazing benefits of being able to rotate keys very quickly, identity management quickly. I made a note that the security and governance component was part of your announcements as well. I wonder if you can sort of just briefly touch on that, because I know there was one of the things that really jumped out for me was that a lot of people don't realize that they can use the likes of the combination of Vault and now OpenShift integration to deploy the likes of, say, protected secrets or security keys without persistent storage, so that even if someone actually gets to an environment, this stuff isn't saved somewhere. It isn't sitting on, disk, let's say. I'd love you to sort of just talk about that as well as some of the other integration with the likes of Jira scanning and so forth, because I think a lot of people don't understand that HashiCorp has an amazing capability there naturally, as well as now what you can do across the breadth of the IBM ecosystem.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. So the when you're thinking about your attack surface or attack vector, there's some key things that you can do to reduce that. Have it storing secrets in within your Kubernetes cluster, whether that's on OpenShift or whether that's just straight Kubernetes. That's something that is a risky thing to have, because as soon as if someone can get into one area of the cluster, they can potentially go across namespaces, etc. And by externalizing all of your configuration and secrets management from the cluster, you immediately make that a very, very hard thing for a bad actor to A, break into, and and B, take advantage of. You keep, even if they get into the environment, you're keeping their opportunity very, very small.
Yeah.
So keeping the storage, the passwords, the secrets out of storage is a great first step. Redeploying your infrastructure, what I'd like to see people thinking about doing is redeploying that infrastructure every week, because that's putting it back to a known good state at least every week. When I ran a team that did Kubernetes, we had it on an automated patching cycle weekly, so we're redeploying that infrastructure every week. So as I say, back to a known good state every week. And that is, when I talk to my security colleagues, that is one of the best ways to also secure your infrastructure. If we touch on the other kind of element you mentioned around secret scanning, that's kind of something relatively new for us with Vault Radar. What is great, what we're seeing there is customers just taking that and doing a scan. And I think what most people don't realize is the extent of the problem. Let's just put it like that.
Right. Yeah.
And you plug in things like Jira and Confluence, etc., and you get an understanding of and then we do a scan, and we actually can do this. We do this with a lot of customers. There's like a 30-day POC just to kind of come in and kind of help them understand, do they have a problem or not. We love doing that one with people. So happy to come in and do that with anyone. But do a scan, and it will pick up anything that's kind of used as a secret or password, etc., within that environment, and will provide a report. It's actually quick and easy for us to do, because we have that product running in our cloud platform. So there's actually no deployment inside your organization to actually get that up and running. So it's running some private network connectivity, and that's it. And you're done if you're in the cloud platform, or you can run it over HTTPS, whichever satisfies your security team. Yeah, we love coming to do that as well.
Yeah, I think one of the announcements that came out was related to that, was the part of the lifecycle cloud operations and lifecycle management. The
Yeah.
HTTP Vault Dedicated now actually offers that whole secrets inventory element and reporting and compliance governance.
Yes.
All that plugs into. And again, I think this is a big win for your clients that you currently got, as well as anyone that works with you. And at the risk of sounding sycophantic, because one of my pet peeves, and I worked in cybersecurity for too long, was the need to constantly provide reporting on current state and historical state as to where were we last month, where are we currently. I also like the idea that you touched on there, where there's this constant redeployment of environments for latest builds, latest code for the DevOps space, pushing into whether it's Docker or Kubernetes or whether it's something else, so that you could stay ahead of potential hacker or threats. But also, you got rid of legacy code that may be running in an instance somewhere that someone forgot about, and then somebody logs in, and all of a sudden some functionality you expected to work doesn't, because there's an instance just floating around that didn't die for some reason. And all of a sudden you end up with a support ticket going, I'm seeing this crazy screen. You're like, that can't be right. We deployed a new release. So, that whole sort of, what was it? I forget who made the comment now, but it's like, treating cloud more like cattle than pets, and constantly stripping it down, building again. And it also makes it impossible for hackers to just keep ahead of, because if you're just deploying updates and new keys and whatever.
That's right.
Now, So when we caught up last, and I want to come back to your conference bit in a minute, some of the announcements. So when we talked last time, and again, congratulations on your gold sponsorship of the ExecOps events in Melbourne and Sydney coming up on October the 22nd and October 28th. One of the things we talked about was the sorts of things that you're working with clients, particularly around the AI need. And you touched on a few things like, the cloud deployments, the cloud scale. But the thing that jumped out at me, and I made a mental note of and wrote down afterwards to ask you in this conversation, was the complexity of some of those AI deployments. And you touched on a really great point as well. Maybe as part of that was try something and let it fail and figure out whether you're good at it or it makes sense. But it seems to me that HashiCorp, and particularly now with your ecosystem being part of IBM, you're so perfectly situated for people who have these AI either initiatives or requirements or deployments or adoptions that are insanely complex and difficult to get their arms around. It seems to me that's a big win for you guys to get in there and go, you know what, we can map it, we can make sure it's secure, we can help you come up with some clean design patterns for it. This is what we do. Is this creating a boom for you guys, not just in the traditional infrastructure space, but also in the consulting, advisory, and professional services, maybe?
Yeah, I think I don't know if it is quite yet, but it's starting. We're kind of starting to see it.
Yeah.
I think we're starting to see that come through. Um, I think if you think about how the cycle's going, um, there's the we're probably through the kind of hype phase, maybe. I don't
I
know.
don't know. We've
I'm
got
not sure if it's through the hype
we got
phase.
Nvidia buying part of OpenAI, buys part of AMD, it's buying
That's right.
Nvidia. It's like we're in that cyclic. What
That's
was
right.
it? The
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
that killed Cisco.
Putting money into Intel and all that kind of thing. But so we're kind of getting through that, and I think
Yeah.
there's still only a small number, I think, of AI projects that are kind of looking at going into some sort of production phase. I kind of ignore a lot of what I read, because I think practically, there's now a blurred line which was between what was traditionally a machine learning project
Yeah.
and is an AI project. But that's probably a conversation for another time. But I think now everything's just an AI project, which is fine. But I think when we look at what proper AI projects are going on and being successfully deployed, majority of those would fit into the chat space
Yep.
or chatbots.
The
Uh,
generative AI piece.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. I mean, I think which is putting different pressures on organizations because that that piece of work itself relies on your data being the data is
Yeah.
used being very
Yeah.
reliable, and providing the right answers, which
Yeah.
is which is it's not that that doesn't exist in companies. It's just companies have had this tendency, especially large ones, to take a version from someone and copy it and then change it slightly for your area. So you then end up with 100 different copies of the same kind of thing, slightly different, which is not great when you're trying to set up that kind of chatbot kind of response, Q&A response, which is still why I don't think they've gone much further than they have. I think we've seen some organizations try and use those in production and then kind of pull them back. So, we'll see how they go. The AI projects will come, and I think the infrastructure is still being built. Honestly, some of the cloud infrastructure is there, obviously, with
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
hyperscalers, but there's a lot of AI infrastructure still being built globally. The data centers are still being built, etc. So I think we will definitely see that start to come through in the next, probably 12, 18 months. I think it's all of this stuff is kind of happening is similar to the cycles we've seen before. There's a lot of expectation, but it's not as fast as we think. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden we're well into it and we kind of don't understand how we got there. If you know what I mean.
Oh
So
yeah, it's the hype cycle all over again, right? We've had it in
yeah, yeah,
Y2K and dot-com boom and big data
yeah.
and cloud and analytics and data science and but I did like the point you just made there though, just to touch on it because I think our audience may get lost in some of the detail around kind of lack of detail on what they're trying to do with AI because as you said, as of 2023 when OpenAI sort of made their ChatGPT generative preformed trained chatbot available, the shift to kind of that interactive conversational, plain English conversational, or whatever your local language is, perception of what AI might be, given that we were sort of talking to Google or Siri or something on our devices, but maybe not as much as we should. But underpinning all that, I think you're absolutely right that the traditional machine learning, whether we're scanning for signatures or some pattern recognition or a face, whether it's robotic process automation, a lot of those things, I mean, they've been happening for a long time. I mean, AI as a concept is over 70 years old now. And I hate to admit how many years I've been working in that space myself. It ages me quickly. But you're right, that shift to more of a generative thing, I think there's a wow factor which made it easy to market. Certainly, I think OpenAI claimed to be the fastest company to get to 100 million users or something to that effect as a result of it. But as you said, there's been some crikey moments or eureka moments where they realize, hallucination, that's actually false data. Or my favorite I read the other day, excuse me, where someone said that 80,000 new AI startups have been created just in America alone every day. And I was like, that can't be right. When I looked at it, what it actually meant was there AI wrappers around ChatGPT. Someone made a little website with a bit of JavaScript that asked one question and did it for lots of people, like, please rewrite my CV or my LinkedIn profile. But bona fide business processes are different. I imagine you're seeing some demand, though, for some of that initial advisory and consulting around what you talked about with data, and that is that you have a great capacity to stand up infrastructure, either short, medium, long term, to create development environments, test environments, training environments, etc. Even, I guess, data validation and temporary data lakes, or whatever the case may be, data rooms, where organizations, as you said, they want to say, take out our HR data and throw some AI at it, see what we can find. But when we're finished, burn it to the ground because this is a proof of concept. Is that something you're seeing now where people are saying, look, we don't quite know what we need to do yet, but we just need the ability to use HashiCorp's capabilities to quickly instantiate some complex infrastructure,
Yeah.
pull in data and keep it secure, manage all the identities and access and so forth, and see what comes out of that, because we don't quite know what the initiative should be long term. We're just testing ideas.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we have one of the great things about our products are the kind of scale of usage of things that we kind of integrate with. You know, our products have thousands of what we call providers, which are really the ability to configure different types of infrastructure or even SaaS providers, you know, but natively from one single command line, if you like. And that extends to a lot of data products as well. You know, we have native connectors for providers for things like Databricks, as an example, which you can use to stand up you know, an environment for purposes you've just described
Yeah.
and tear it down afterwards. So yeah, definitely that's kind of bread and butter stuff for us, is to help organizations stand up repeatable environments to test things in, and tear them down at the end, provide short time-lived environments, all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, that's definitely something we can help with.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of demand in that space, and it's a conversation I recommend everyone that's turning up to ExecOps and BeerOps will be seeing you either in person or your team in some of the demos, is to come along with the idea that your organization is going to ask you to do things that you may not have done before, or if you've done before, you need to do it more rapidly,
Mhm.
at a different scale, or just in a different format. And as you said, it's either third-party environments like Databricks, where you're using your HashiCorp tools to instantiate and automate that process, stand up and then burn it down. But also the compliance and regulatory requirements and governance that comes around, which is, what did you stand up? How long did you stand it up for? Who had access to it? What data went into it? And when you burnt it down, did all the data go away? So you can document that whole sort of end-to-end process for a proof of concept or
Yeah,
an interim training environment. Because I think a lot of companies are now going to be asking, where did our data go? Who touched it? What did they do with it? What did they learn? What
yeah,
access? What did they even see? So that when you burn it down, that everyone can go to sleep at night knowing that it's never going to end up on the front of the Sydney Morning Herald or whatever. Now, one last thing before we wrap up. You've recently also just put out a very exciting freebie, which is the 2025 Cloud Complexity Report from
yes,
HashiCorp, looking at, I guess, what leaders are doing to tackle the cloud complexity element. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you surveyed or polled or spoke to sort of over 1,000, I think 1,100 sort of leaders in business and technology to look at how they're navigating AI and security and cloud. Give us a quick walk down of sort of the report itself, and we can maybe dive in a few details around there. But firstly, sort of, how did this come about? What drove the initiative to put this together? Is it a regular thing you do? And then we'll sort of dive into what's in it.
Yeah, it's a regular thing that we do. We want to understand, we as a company we have the kind of the luck of working with a large number of companies now globally. By I look internally, it's quite interesting, our customer base. Um, but what that means is we've got some unique data, or get some unique insights from these companies on really how they're going. You know, cloud first, or cloud strategies for transformation have been, around for a while. And we wanted to kind of check in and see where the companies are at with their kind of transformational journey. Having worked through this myself and seen the hard work that goes into kind of making it really successful, I think it's kind of clear from the data we're getting back that there's a lot of companies that have struggled. There's some that are doing well, but there's a lot that are finding it kind of hard to keep the momentum going.
Yeah.
And I think the call, I mean, the stats are interesting, but the kind of the clear call outs are that um, the organizations are probably thinking it's going to be much quicker than it is to be able to get their cloud migration or cloud transformation done. And I think if you actually look at published data that sits, in like the academic space, it can take 7, 8 years to do a transformation properly. And I think companies are expecting to do that in a much shorter time frame. And when they don't, they kind of lose momentum. So I think one of the key things is that kind of have that strategy of how you're going. What are your stage gates for success? And that this is kind of how I think, just to keep the
Yeah.
momentum going. Um, are you set up for success? And that's another thing that the report kind of calls out as well, is that, and what we see as an organization is that teams that are organizations that build something like a platform engineering group that's kind of focused on making the rest of the organization really super successful in their cloud adoption, um, are the ones that do the best. Again, because I used to run that team.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can completely see how that was beneficial to our organization. Um, because when you're in a, even a medium-sized company, you kind of don't want to end up with half the organization working on the infrastructure as well as applications. It kind of doesn't seem to make sense. We never operated like that in the past. I don't know why we kind of thinking moving to that model. It kind of works, but it seems to have been a bit blurred lined on what DevOps actually means.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go in. I'm not going to get into that right now. Happy to,
That's a religious debate.
yeah. I'm sure I've had that conversation with a few people,
Yeah.
at the
You'll
at
have it at
ExecOps.
execops in Melbourne and
So
Sydney. Yep.
yeah,
Brace yourself.
but yeah, for me, DevOps is really about, as an application owner, I'm building and running and supporting it in production.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but from my application perspective, that doesn't mean I have to do all the infrastructure elements as well. So, I think that's where we see is that organizations that have created patterns for infrastructure that are reusable and repeatable and compliant and secure, are much more successful at this as well. So I think that those are the kind of overall key takeaways. So think about that. So if you're kind of struggling around what to do next, think about that, creating that platform engineering group. You need to take control of how your cloud's being used and managed, and
Yeah. Yeah.
think about how, the opportunity there is to think about how you can maybe bring in some of your cloud costs, because I think with a kind of like federated approach to kind of use of cloud and managing cloud in the organizations, tend to end up with spiraling kind of cloud costs, and there's an opportunity to, actually a business case there to kind of reduce your cloud costs and we can, we actually HashiCorp can help you with all of that. That's
You
the
can
beauty.
indeed. And it's a catch-22, isn't it? Because once your cloud costs get high, there's a high cost to essentially address your high cloud costs, which
Yes.
I've seen in the likes of News Corp and Ergon and a bunch of other big projects that I worked on here, where we had multiple hyperscalers, multiple deployment models, multiple design patterns, lots of the development teams, and not one sort of consistent group worrying about the on-prem or third-party data center or cloud infrastructure space. And when things got complex and expensive, it took a lot of time and a lot more money to address the current state as well as look at future state of where we're going to, because you can't run lots of copies of your environment at all times and all of it. And
You got
it becomes runaway very quickly, but HashiCorp is positioned very well. There are a couple of key things I made a note of that really did astound me from your cloud complexity report for 2025, which we will have details wherever people see this. For our audience that tuned in, wherever you see this, we will have details on not only the HashiCorp website, but a link to their cloud complexity report, because it is a must read. It's free. It's literally your name and email, and you grab a copy and download it straight away. Half or over half, about 52%, I think, of the organizations you surveyed, with over 1,100 or so, we're dealing with multiple environments and tools and providers. That speaks to that complexity element in itself. That I found astounding. But the other one at the other end of the spectrum was, I think it was 73% had a lack of collaboration between or alignment between the teams who are responsible for those very tools and systems. And I was like, oh, yep, that's something that someone like HashiCorp needs to come in and help fix quickly, because that's a snowball that can again quickly become a very expensive nightmare. Imagine you're seeing that on a regular basis from not just the data you got from the people you spoke to and surveyed and polled with a complexity report, but also your day-to-day conversations you're having as
yes,
CTO across clients.
yes, yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think I quite often start having a conversation with an organization around how they're structured, because it actually helps me understand kind of where they're thinking or where they are at, almost in terms of their kind of their transformational journey. We still seem to operate across a wide range of organizations in quite a siloed manner. And that siloed manner just drives kind of complexity in terms of being able to adopt the platform engineering group.
Yeah,
Um, it does end up with and it kind of there's extreme examples where you end up with the application group operating completely on their own, separate from the infrastructure team. And the application group use one set of tools, the infrastructure team use one set of tools, and never the twain shall meet, which is an interesting kind of approach. But then the application teams between them use different tools. So these and I think that maybe what's been thought of in the past is that's okay. But I think there's an underlying cost element to that, efficiency, more to do with security than anything else.
right,
Because I think until you can get things into a central, you can get a central view of what's going on in your environment. You don't understand your security configuration, your identity management, for your secrets management, vulnerability management, where it's at. And I'm not talking scanning on your laptops. I'm talking, you've got a container. What vulnerabilities are in your container?
yeah,
What vulnerabilities are in your running containers, your long running containers in production? Because I've actually seen that catch out companies as well. They think everything's sweet, but then they don't actually realize they've got a container that's been running in a cluster for 18 months or something like that. That doesn't get redeployed,
right,
so it
yeah, yeah,
gets skipped by all these tools, etc. So yeah, I think it's a problem. There's definitely a cultural thing there around how do you bring that back in, because a lot of teams, sorry, identify themselves based on the tools that they manage and control. So they don't necessarily want to give up control of tools that they have. So yeah, there's a lot in that's kind of it requires a lot of change and a lot of hard work, and actually requires a lot of collaboration, which is what I found over the years is one of the most effective elements to kind of help to to manage that change, is
Indeed.
get people work together and kind of group of people that wouldn't necessarily always come together and agree, well, if you're using these three tools for the same thing, let's just agree we use one and then move everyone onto that. All right, what's the next one? And if you keep doing that and you kind of go through everything and get people to work together, you kind of end up with a kind of standard approach, and you've actually created the elements you need to create that platform engineering team. Sorry to harp on about that, but
No,
I
not at all.
do believe that is
It's a
a
critical
is a
point.
key thing to help with the change. And until you can get into that mindset, and I'm working with a couple of customers now who I've talked to about this, and they're kind of starting to implement it, and are already kind of starting to see the benefits.
Well, there were a couple of numbers that really jumped out at me from the report as well that I had to do a bit of a cold shiver on, because as you said, there are containers that run for a long time. I've seen environments where something as simple as a log server could be running for 1+ years in a container, because someone just forgot about it and wanted it running all the time, and they want all of their SNMP and other data tracking to it and all their API logs going to it so that it's never lost. And then no one sits around going, well, can we load balance this? Can we run a couple of these? Can we have them reinstantiated so we can push new updates? And they're like, no, just let it run. We'll come back to it. And then they find out that their log server is actually probably the simplest way to breach their network. But there are,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you're getting the same shivers because you look at them going, how long's this been running and how much
Yes.
data's on this? And then eventually it's a nightmare moving all the data as well because it's sitting locally. But I think there was a data point that jumped out from the report, and that was the vast majority, and in brackets was like 97% of organizations are using multiple tools and so forth. But that 90% admitted they were struggling with their cloud infrastructure in general, and there was 98%, I think it was, so they were facing cost-related challenges. And when I put that together and go, you're struggling, 97% struggling or admit they're struggling with their cloud infrastructure, and 98% admitting they're struggling with the cloud infrastructure costs. Um, that's a couple of good reasons to not go to sleep at night, or at least be woken up in the middle of the night and stress about things. So that is definitely something that I recommend that attendees for ExecOps and BROps come have a conversation with you about, which is, okay, if 1,100 odd senior people in technology have said that 97% of them are having problems managing their complex cloud infrastructure and 98% are having troubles managing the costs associated, then that sort of directly speaks to that whole topic, which is the cloud complexity becoming an obstacle to innovation, which is a core
Yeah.
part of the report. Well, Andrew, we could talk forever, and I think we will
Yeah.
definitely have you back to talk about that more in detail. But thank you so much for giving us a much more deep dive breakdown into kind of the company. Really great to get some insights into sort of the IBM acquisition and the broader ecosystem, and certainly what some of the announcements that were made at your recent conference. And congratulations on the 10-year conference. And again, congratulations on your 6-month anniversary in the company yourself. Hope you've celebrated that with cake of some form.
Thank you.
We will look forward to seeing you at both the Melbourne and Sydney events for ExecOps and BROps on October the 22nd and the 28th. And for folk who are tuning in, if you haven't already registered, well, if this conversation isn't a good reason to register, I don't know what is. Go jump on the BROps.io website, register immediately for the relevant event. If for some reason you can't go to one of those events, or you're just not in a local area that can get to it easily or travel to it or whatever the case may be, register anyway, because it puts you on the mailing list. It keeps you up to date with what's going on. And even if you end up it's sold out, register and get on the wait list. Maybe somebody will then drop out or not be able to make it, and you can go and jump online. Andrew, wrap us up quickly if you can in 60 seconds with the speed dating format of what's the best way to keep up to date with what you're doing professionally, what the company's doing, and some of the news and announcements. How do people keep across what's going on as they lead up to the event, after the events, and potentially even if they can't make it to the events?
Yeah, but thanks, Des. Best way to keep in touch with me is follow on LinkedIn. Best way to keep up with what's going on with HashiCorp is via our blog on our website, which has just been uplifted. Actually, is now, I think it's called Stacks. So we're that's the best way to keep in touch with what's going on with our organization. We also publish on the HashiCorp LinkedIn page as well, and across all kind of social media channels. But that's the kind of main way, I think, to keep up with us
Perfect.
and what's going on.
Fantastic. And as I said earlier, folks who've tuned in, wherever you see this, whether it's on our YouTube channel or whether you're seeing it through a promoted post on social media and digital platforms, we will have links to not only the HashiCorp website, but also to their social media profiles with Twitter and LinkedIn and so forth for the company, and obviously Andrew. Highly recommend you go and bookmark the website. Have a look at all the training resources. They've got an enormous resource library. There's a really active blog. I've actually got it in my RSS feed reader because it's as active as any blog I've ever seen, but with some authoritative content. Some great case studies there that you really should get across, some good white papers. But two other things I highly recommend is there's an Enterprise Academy. You'll get very excited when you see that, so I won't give away what that's about, but just go and have a look at the HashiCorp.com website, and they're under resources with the Enterprise Academy. And there's a really great directory for partners integrators. So go find a partner integrator that's in your ecosystem, with your transport, logistics, aviation, state government, federal government, finance, etc. Find the partner, have a conversation, and you will get to talk to HashiCorp at the events directly. Make sure you do your homework, do the prep, do the background on who the people are and the company, and come prepared with a good question or two, and then plan how you're going to build that relationship ongoing. But Andrew, great to see you again. Thanks so much for making time to catch up a second time. Really appreciate the insights, and we would love to have you back again to talk about some of the points you raised today, because there's so many to talk about in just that AI space alone that we could keep you all day. But I know that we've probably had you over time already. So thanks for your time again. Safe travels. Look forward to seeing you at the event, and really looking forward to having you back on the show again soon.
Yeah, great. Delighted to come back anytime, Des. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Andrew. Cheers.